Me again. Do you want to go on a walk? We've got a couple of options here. So, let's see, Red Oak Trail, half a mile, White Oak Trail, much longer, Hickory Trail, probably Red Oak or Hickory. Let's take a look. I actually found a better map over here, so it's like Red Oak here, and then Hickory's down that way, so I guess Red Oak it is.
But I'm so frustrated. Hello to my loneliness. I guess that ignorance is bliss. Take me back to before.
Now, I don't know if it's going to be windy or not, so excuse any of that noise. But I figured I'd take you with me. It only just started getting warm out here. We had our first 80-degree day yesterday, and I've only been hearing the birds in the morning for about 2 weeks now. So yeah, we literally only just got rid of the snow. We had actually a big final dump of it right at the end of March. So it stays cold up here for a while, and then it very suddenly becomes spring summer. One of my favorite things to do, obviously, is to go out foraging, but right at the beginning of spring, everything kind of looks more like fall. Everything's still dead, takes a while to start perking back up. So in reality, it's not so much foraging as it is just getting to know the land as it starts to revive each year and see what's springing up where. Some of those plants that have a couple of year cycles, like mullein does. For those of you who don't know, mullein has a 2-year cycle. So the first year, it's just the rosette springing out of the ground, and then the second year is when you actually get those tall stalks popping out. So, it's kind of nice to see some of those cycles side by side, because you'll have a first year and a second year plant next door to each other. And just, familiarizing myself with maybe an area I've not been to before. Part of my mission this year is to explore more of the sort of off the beaten trail areas. Like, there's always going to be nature preserves and things in the larger cities that are closer to me, but the little towns with 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 people, maybe even just 500, sometimes they also have little nature spots that really don't get explored as much, and in a way that can be nicer. It's quieter, and there's going to be less chance of meeting somebody out here. So in reality, it's nicer for the recluse a little bit. Now, thankfully, that also means that there's less trash, so there's not as much opportunity, for better and for worse, to be able to pick some of that up as an offering. But I think that's better. Not having to worry about that, not thinking about people abusing the land and just trashing it because why not? Who cares? It's nicer to worry about that less than in the bigger spaces, but I'm sure there's always a little something to pick up or to give back. Another thing I like to do for devotional work and honoring nature is actually through my photography. I like to take pictures of all those little details of all the small plants springing up, the flowers, the things that might otherwise be overlooked. We get caught up in all these big, beautiful, showy plants, the large towering trees and the big bushes of flowers. I think sometimes we forget that everything starts small. Everything starts so tiny it's almost unnoticeable, or for so long while they're growing underneath the ground, unseen to us entirely. So I really like to honor them by taking pictures of them to celebrate all those little moments of beauty that so often are passed over because we're searching for something so much bigger, when in reality that big picture is right there, as small as you could possibly find. You want to know what else the photography is good for? As a note, at least for myself, it's really good for identification, especially because I really like getting photos of plants at all stages of growth. It really helps be able to identify them at any stage. So I can know, oh, this tiny plant I took a picture of last year in April or May or whenever is actually this one that's now grown larger, and I can identify it with apps. I can learn to identify them on my own, and some things I have, but it's really useful for getting to learn them in that kind of intimate sense where you're going to want to be able to find it. Some plants you want to find while they're younger, some plants you want to find when they're older, some plants you want to find right before they flower, things like that. So all those stages are going to be important depending on what you're looking to use them for. So for me, that digital record, that photographic record of what they look like at different stages, to be able to identify them more easily, artistic value aside, is always really helpful. I appreciate plants, of course, but mushrooms? Ooh, baby. I've always tried to be super honest with you guys about my craft, what's going on in my life. all that kind of stuff. So, you know, this is the honesty part of the video where I just get real raw and open and maybe a little emotional, and that's fine. On top of just going out for foraging and things like that, I obviously do what a lot of people do when they go out in nature, which is reflect and meditate and really just sort of have a moment of quiet with myself, with my own brain, in a way that I don't really get in my own apartment even sometimes. And I've been feeling a lot. I've been gone for the better part of a year, and I'm sure some of you guys are really curious about that. So I figured it'd just be easy to be upfront about it. It's been a hard year. It's been really hard. Part of me going dark was because, yeah, you guessed it. Some of you know where this is going. I did move again, so that happened. Yep, that makes 4 times since January of 2022, so super cool. I would like to say I hope I'm done now, but I say that every time, so you'll hear when the next one is, whenever that happens, because it'll happen. Who knows? It was a hard year. It was very hard. I felt very lonely a lot of the time. I was in Minneapolis for a little over a year, and I'm not anymore. I'm not even in Minnesota. I actually moved back to Wisconsin, which might be shocking for some of you guys. It was shocking for me too. And part of why it was shocking was because I had things in Minnesota and in Minneapolis that made me happy, like really happy. But I wasn't happy generally. I was happy with those things, but I was not happy where I was. Minneapolis itself was not making me happy, even if those things did. And I needed more than that to be able to feel healthy and whole. So I made the really tough choice and broke my lease early, which was very expensive, and moved back to Wisconsin. My life kind of shifted a lot since about a year ago in March, and I've taken that time to reassess what it is that I want with my life, with YouTube, with social media, with my path, my craft, my practice, like everything kind of got reevaluated in the last year. So some of those details I'm still not sure about. Trying out new formats, as you can hopefully see. Trying out new things in my craft, which won't all necessarily be public. And, you know, I'm just trying to adapt to my new life and readapt to some of the things that I've been missing, because I'm in familiar locations, just a little different. So it's revisiting things with a new eye that I haven't had for several years. I lived near Minneapolis for a while, but you know, actually being there and then coming back to old haunts, old habits, but with new perspective is just very different. Part of what made the last year difficult was trying to assess why it was that I was creating, which I know is really stereotypical. A lot of creators and YouTubers always go through that phase of, why am I doing it? But especially when it's something that is as important and as impactful as witchcraft and paganism can be, as religious and spiritual practice can be, that just adds another layer. What is it that drives me to create? What is it that makes me do what I do? And why do I want to share it with everybody? And part of the thoughts I was struggling with for a while was, are my thoughts even important? Is my input even important? You have all these other creators, all these authors, a lot of other people out there, not to mention your own resources. Why do my thoughts matter? And honestly, I haven't really answered that question. That's still something that I'm struggling with a little bit. There's also something that I think artists will understand, which is the urge to create for the sake of creation versus the urge to create for a purpose. And does everything I do need to have a purpose? And I think the answer is no. But social media makes that feel like that is the wrong answer. It makes it feel like you have to create for engagement and for a reason, and you have to have something important to say all the time. And in reality, sometimes, yes, that's what I want to do. But a lot of the time, I just want to make stuff to make stuff. I want to make pretty things because they're pretty, and not because it says anything about the world or my practice or whatever it is. I just want to take a pretty photo and kind of be done with it. Now, the other portion of it is some other parts of what I want to do involve more deep-rooted things that are going to get real personal. I wasn't sure that it was worth doing because it just felt like clutter in a way. And I don't mean clutter in the sense of it's useless, because there is a purpose to it. Documenting your life is important, and I like doing that. I do. But I struggle with it because with having ADHD, you tend to be messy your whole life, and I definitely was. I always had stuff all over the floor because you're a visual thinker. Your brain needs to see it or else it doesn't exist, because as soon as it's out of sight, it disappears. It stops existing. So I always needed my things to be out, which meant I was messy, which means I got yelled at a lot, which made me feel deep down like my presence and my things in particular, my possessions, were a burden. They were in the way. They just were making somebody else's life harder. And so I've always struggled with having things, even though I'm messy. I don't own a lot of items. I don't tend to hang things up on the wall unless I have a partner who does that. I don't tend to keep things. Every time I move, I purge my items, and so I have less and less and less every time. And videos and photography and creating kind of felt the same way. Documenting my life felt like clutter because existing was a burden. And it's not. It's very hard to feel those things and to feel like your presence is a burden or you're in people's way all the time when you're clearly not. People want you around, but I mean, that's what it results in. That's where I ended up. I think my point is that connecting with nature and connecting with the small things that are overlooked, finding things through their cycles as they're just sprouting up and nurturing them and understanding them and getting to know them, for me is very healing, because I'm still trying to get to know myself at 27, nearly 28. You know, it's just part of that path where for so long I felt like I knew who I was and what I wanted, and then it all just kind of changed in an instant in a way where being in Minneapolis really challenged me, because I thought so deeply that it was what I wanted, and there were a lot of parts of it that I wanted, but none of it was right. And then my whole life felt like it wasn't right. And so I've just been taking this last year to reconnect with some of that and decide to explore who I am now and the things that I want now, and accepting that it's probably going to change forever. That's just part of it. It's always going to be changing. Some of that's the ADHD, some of that's life, and that's okay. So I'm working on that. I don't know how frequent my content's going to be at this point, but I'm going to do my best to keep making things as often as I want. Let's put it that way. I'll make things as often as I would like to, and I'll continue to share this journey with you as long as you'll have me. If you want to follow along, you could subscribe here on YouTube. You could follow me on Instagram. I did shut down my Patreon mid-year because I knew that I had stopped creating and I didn't know when I was going to be coming back to it. But if you want to support me, you can go to my Ko-Fi, buy me a coffee. I'm working full-time again, so it's not like this is part-time and work is part-time. So this will just be as I go, and maybe I'll keep picking it up. Maybe I'll keep finding ways to have a purpose and have something to say while also just documenting my life for the sake of it. We'll see. And until next time, take care of yourselves. Blessed be. All that kind of stuff.